Are we being taken over by the Communist Party? Is communism coming to the U.S.? I believe that I have sufficient evidence to say yes, there is a concerted effort to promote communism in this country.
The Doctor of Disaster is a wholly owned subsidiary of Warnick & Associates Incorporated. Don't forget to get your copy of the Doctor of Disaster's book, Emergency Incident Management Systems, at Amazon.com. This book is the go-to on managing disasters and on the Instant Command System. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Doctor of Disaster. You know, hit that button over there.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Doctor of Disaster. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Warnick. I'm considered a subject matter expert in public safety and public health by not one, but two different universities. So, I started this series about the communist takeover of America. Are we being taken over by the Communist Party? Is communism coming to the U.S.? I believe that I have sufficient evidence to say yes, there is a concerted effort to promote communism in this country. And I've done a lot of research on this. It's been mind-boggling. And some of this stuff that I've found scares the daylights out of me. Not gonna mix words. That's the way it is. So in my research, what have I found out that scares the living daylights out of me? Well, I found out that in 1928, the Communist Party put out a memo, maybe more than a memo, but it was not very long. But they had a twofold plan to take over the American government. There was a violent and a non-violent way, and the two should coincide. And what it would do is provide a gradual transition to socialism, which would then go to communism. One of the books that was gone through was On the Nature of Revolution. And it was by a Herman, and I can't pronounce his last name, not even going to attempt it. But one of the things that he had in that book was the Negro question, or as we would say today, the African American question. And the thing that you need to realize about communists is they don't set short-term goals. They have long-term goals, and they're willing to wait 80 or 100 years. So this was around 1932. The first memo was in 1928. But the violent takeover of America, or the violent portion of it, was basically to create a class division between African Americans and Caucasians. And the way they planned to do this was to provide a divide. What they wanted to do was to take a race war to a class war. And they would use both because the majority of African Americans at that time were a lower socioeconomic status. So they used, or they proposed using, race and class against the United States. And communists in 1928 pointed out that the racial differences were the weakest and most vulnerable link in our societal fabric. Communists decided, or determined, or whatever you want to call it, that by focusing on the divide, it would bring about a larger rift that would start to destroy our country. And actually, a lot of what happened during the civil rights movement was caused by, in part by, communism pointing out the differences. Or communists, whatever you want to call them. And those differences actually did good, and we came up with the civil rights movement. But in that 1928 and 32 document, they talked about how the country should be divided and we should become two separate nations so that they could get their communist foot into one of those nations and then further expand it into the other. Now, they would call this a war of liberation. The violent part of it would cause chaos, anarchy, destruction, and crises. They'd revolve it around a crisis in our government so that they could cause mass confusion among the general public. In the 1950s, there was a black gentleman by the name of Manning Johnson, who was a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. And not only was he a card-carrying member, but he rose up the ranks all the way up to the head of the civil rights group. And I'm probably explaining this wrong, but you get the idea. He rose up to be the leader of the civil rights group in the Communist Party. Now, what happened was he knew the inner workings of the Communist Party. And it didn't take him too awful long after he got to the top to realize that the Communist Party did not care about the African American community. All they were was an ends to a means. They wanted to start a revolution. They wanted to take over America, and they would do it by causing the African Americans, the blacks, to uprise, and that was their plan. That didn't work. In fact, according to many accounts, that is part of what brought about the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. The secondary part of that would be the peaceful takeover. And they would infiltrate government or party or whatever and start pushing their ideological agenda. And they would continue to do that. Now, it's at this point I'm going to point you, and if you look in the pinned box down below, I'll point you to a Project Veritas project, and it is undercover video of communists working in major departments at major, I should say communists and socialists actually, and Marxists, working in the government, actually trying to undermine our government. And they admit it. They didn't realize they were being taped. And they fully admit it. And they say they aren't the only ones. So we can see that this is actually happening and been happening. So this is kind of the original plan. In or around 1958, a book came out by an FBI agent who had researched how communism would take over America. This FBI agent was named Cleon Skousen, and he came up with 45 communist goals. And this was eye-opening to me. It was probably the most eye-opening thing that I have ever seen. And I'd like to go through those goals right now. And some of them, well, you'll see but about 39 or 40 of the 45 goals have been met. That's how close we are to being a communist country. The first 2 or 3 are about nuclear options. One is the U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to war. Number 2 is the U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. Number 3 is develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. For anyone that was alive during all of these, what do I want to call them, nuclear negotiations, it was regularly said that the U.S. had a higher moral strength because they were trying to prevent that. Extension of long-term loans to Russia and all of those that Russia is involved with, or not actually involved with. They call them satellites, so countries that are communist countries. And it says, number 6 is provide American aid to all nations regardless of communist domination. Guess what? That's done too. Number 7, grant recognition of Red China, and they should admit Red China to the UN. That's done. Number 8, set up East and West Germany as separate states in spite of Khrushchev's promise in 1955 to settle the German question by free elections under supervision of the UN. Number 9 is long gone, but it's prolong the conferences to ban atomic tests because the United States has agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in progress. Number 10, allow all Soviet satellites, in other words, countries that are communist, that are allies of Russia, to have individual representation in the United Nations. Long gone. Number 11, promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. Its charter is rewritten, demand that it be set up as a one world government with its own independent armed forces. And the reason behind this was that some communist leaders believed that the world could be taken over by the UN as easily as by Russia. Now, number 12. Resist any attempt to outlaw communism in the United States. Here's one. Do away with all loyalty oaths. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Up, there it goes. Yeah, all loyalty oaths. Next thing you know, you won't even have an oath to go into the service. Number 14, continue giving Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. Gee, I wonder why they wanted that. Number 15. This is really important, and I believe we see it today. Capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. Number 16. And there are a lot of people that are angry about this, but it's already happened. Use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. I can think of so many things here, and I'm sure you can too. Number 17, get control of the schools. Use them as a transmission belt for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum, get control of teachers' associations, put the party line in textbooks. That ship has sailed. Number 18. Gain control of all student newspapers. That's happened quite a lot. Number 19. Use student riots to foment public protests against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. All you have to do is watch what's happening every time someone wants to come speak at a university or somewhere else and they don't want to hear it. They're there in droves. Here's one that probably you could never guess in a million years. Infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, and policy making positions. 21. Oh, this is a good one. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Gee, I wonder if that's happening. 22. Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to eliminate all good sculptures from parks and buildings and substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. Why do they want to do that? Because what they're doing is they're tearing down our history and taking away any emotion. Why would they do that? Well, if you look at what Joseph Stalin said, he said, America is like a healthy body and its resistance is threefold. It's patriotism, its morality, and its spiritual life. If we can undermine these three areas, America will collapse from within. And it's happening. Oh, Lord, is it happening. 23, control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art. I think they've done it. Number 24 was to eliminate all laws that governed obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. They could take that morality away. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. Number 27, infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. Number 28, eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the ground that it violates the separation of church and state. That one there kind of gets me. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that we are still being attacked by this, and at almost every government building. Discredit, number 29, discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. What are they saying right now? Yeah. Number 30, and this has happened in the last months. Discredit the American founding fathers. Present them as selfish aristocrats that had no concern for anyone but themselves, and that they had no concern for the common man. Ooh. Number 31, belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history on the grounds that it was only a minor part of the bigger picture. Give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. 32. Support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture, education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics, etc. So you see what they're doing. They want to support all this healthcare for all, college debt. That's all part of the communist plan to take over America. Ooh. Number 33, eliminate all laws or procedures that interfere with the communist activities. Number 34, eliminate the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Gone. Number 35, discredit and eventually dismantle the FBI. I think we've seen that lately. Ooh. Number 36, infiltrate and gain control of more unions. So they already had unions, some, and they're trying to expand it, which I believe they have. Number 37, infiltrate and gain control of big business. I think they've done some of that too. This one scares the hell out of me, and this is what they're proposing right now. Number 38, transfer some of the powers of arrest from police to social agencies. Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders, which no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat.
Ooh.
Number 39, dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. '40. Discredit the family as an institution. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Really? Think we're there already. Number 41. Emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppressive influence of parents. Number 42, create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of the American tradition, that students and special interest groups should rise up and use united force to solve economic, political, and social problems. Number 43, overthrow all colonial governments before native populations are ready for self-government. Number 44, internationalize the Panama Canal. And number 45, repeal the Connolly Reservation so the United States cannot prevent the World Court from seizing jurisdiction over domestic problems. Give the World Court jurisdiction over nations and individuals alike. So I just went through a whole lot of goals that they had that was above and beyond the 1928 and 1932. And I'm going to stop here today and let you think about these. Maybe even view the video again. But I believe that we are in a crisis right now. I believe the safety of the United States is about to go communist. And I believe that will, one, take away our freedoms, and two, it will make us less safe. All I can say is, next time I come back, I'm going to go through these individually and tell if it's been done already, or if it's in progress, or if it's about to happen. And this will help show you just how close we are to the overthrow of a legitimate government and a legitimate constitution. Oh my goodness, why did I get into this? I will see you all later. Thank you everyone, and please stay tuned for the next episode. Be safe. I've got a favor to ask of you. In order for this channel to grow, I need your help. I need you to like the videos. I need you to subscribe to the channel and comment. All of those play into YouTube's algorithms. And to be quite honest, we're growing slowly because people aren't doing those things and they're not sharing the videos.
The Doctor of Disaster is a wholly owned subsidiary of Warnick and Associates Incorporated.